Hello, FloodGate family. How you guys doing? I hope you're having a wonderful afternoon, morning, depending where you are. Hey, reason we're having this, we came here together is these are interesting times. And for a lot of people, they find themselves searching for a job. Many of them searching for the first time since college. And you know what? Finding a job is a job. And like anything else, the better you are at knowing how to do it, the more effective you are at getting the result you want. In this case, it's finding the next role. So we hope today we got a 4-part series where we're going to be going through each part of the job search. Today, I've got Heidi Herrick with me. Heidi has been recruiting and in the talent business for over 15 years. She has worked and placed hundreds and hundreds of people with companies and has forgotten more about the best practices than many of us have ever known. So I am just awesome and excited to have Heidi here joining us. So thanks for taking the time and being on the live stream here, Heidi.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to help job seekers. It's an incredible privilege to take all of this information and all of this experience that we've built over the last 15 years and now be able to pay it forward to job seekers. So I'm excited.
It's great. Well, today we're going to focus on what sometimes people miss. This is the beginning of the search, which the beginning of the search is, working on a lot of times that personal brand. Now, Heidi, why is the personal brand today so important and crucial for job seekers?
Yeah, so there's a reason why the series starts with this and not how to ace the interview, because really this is where it starts and people miss this. So what people need to know, especially as they're facing a job search, is that not only are we in an employer-driven market, but we're also in a marketing-driven market, right? Because of COVID, we're not doing things in person. And so all the more reason why marketing yourself in your job search is crucial, right? So employers are just as much let's just use the word review driven as consumers are. So employers still want to, if they could look on Amazon for their next employees, they would. Obviously they can't do that. So they're a little bit more stealth in what they do, but they are 100% vetting candidates before they interview candidates. So it's incredibly important that job seekers are thoughtful and discerning in the way that they present and message their future employers.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes total sense. And then, but so if they're thinking about that, I'm sure you've seen a few people stumble and fall over the years and make some mistakes. Can we learn a little bit from some of those big mistakes so people on this call don't step on that landmine and hear it click?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously there's many. We probably don't have time to cover them all in this short session here today. But I would say that the umbrella that I would lump all of them into is that, we've all heard that old proverb, the man who builds his house on a rock will survive the storm, and the man who builds his house on the sand will get blown away. And what we've seen much of at FloodGate, and especially, me personally, I've seen a lot of people building their job search on the sand. And it's natural. I get it. Like intuition tells them there's a fire and I need to put it out, right? I'm out of work. I need to get a job. And so they move into this place of action before they've set their foundation for that job search. And so what happens is they go out guns blazing and they do these big canvases of their target employers, their network, job boards, all of the above. And it's like throwing, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like throwing a spaghetti noodle against the wall to see what sticks. But what they don't realize is there's only, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, right? So when you do that and you just go out, try to put that fire out, you're inviting your future employer to now check you out, right? And so if you don't look the part, if you don't sound the part, if you're sloppy, if you just are totally failing in terms of the messaging and your image, your opportunity for that conversation is essentially blown. So I would say that that's kind of the category, and there's a lot of things that fall into that of what it looks like to build a house on sand for your job search. So we could certainly go into that, but things like having a weak LinkedIn profile. And there's a difference between a weak LinkedIn profile and a bad LinkedIn profile. A weak LinkedIn profile just means that it's like a skeleton. It's super lean, right? A bad LinkedIn profile is a bad headshot, which doesn't make you look like the professional that you want to be, right? Or just it's not a bad LinkedIn profile would be treating your background like it's an encyclopedia of information. So just listing, instead of approaching it like a story that needs to be told, where you're hooking your audience. So those are just some examples.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, for people in this, most of this audience, they're sales, marketing professionals. I mean, I really align it to launching or selling a product, right? You don't go to market without a known value proposition that you want to give to the customer. You don't walk into an account and make a call without doing a pre-call plan. Well, you do, but it doesn't go very well, right? So it's same thing here, right? So it's having, what is that key thing you know is going to be the hook? That even if you don't make the sale right now, where they don't have that job right now, they're going to remember you for a specific reason, and you're going to impress. Because when that does open up, they, at that conference call where the job comes up, hey, I think I know a guy, because you talked to him 2 weeks ago and you had a very sticky, sharp message. And by the way, when they Google search you, which is the next step, or pull you up on LinkedIn, it aligns exactly with what you told them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what you're saying, right, Heidi? People, they get excited. They're like, I'm out of a job. I'm going to call everybody I know without a plan, and end up salting the fields. That's good. Really good suggestion.
Yeah, 100%.
So
employers, one more thought about that. I would even go so far as to say that I would call that part of the process a pre-interview. So before you've even confirmed a formal conversation with your desired audience, that activity leading up to that point is pre-interview. That's baked into the interview process. And again, job seekers may not necessarily be thinking that having their real estate license in their SIG file may be harmful to them. Having their whatever it is, their beauty consulting slogan at the bottom of these little things employers are noticing and they're paying attention to, and it's reflective of who they are and what they offer the company. And if they're offering a distracted, divided, sloppy persona, they're never going to get to that next step. So each touch point needs to be treated as an interview.
Yep. And they're thin slicing. These decisions happen like that. So it's got to be quick and clean. So now, what are some of the best things people are doing that you've seen, that really help them improve their personal brand? Where are they focusing? What are they doing right?
Okay. So I would say that there's 3 elements to a strong personal brand. And those elements would be, this probably, hopefully won't be a surprise to people, but the resume, the LinkedIn profile, and what we could all just call a value proposition, elevator pitch. I've heard a bunch of different terms for that, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So those are the 3 pillars of having a strong foundation. If you go back, like to use your example, Joe, of going into that customer's facility with your brochure before you've even, gotten clearance for your product, that's foolish, right? So before you go into your job search and you don't have those 3 elements completely nailed, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So savvy job seekers take that time on the front end to nail their resume, their LinkedIn profile, and their value prop. So to further kind of peel back the onion on those things, the resume, what I tend to see a lot of are resume hoarders. So what I mean by that is they get a job, right? They're in that job for 5 years and then they find themselves on the job market. And so then they take their resume from 5 years ago and then they add on most recent employer and some information about that. And then fast forward another 5 years and then they do that again. Well then, okay, so imagine you've got this middle-aged person who's been working for 25 years, right? And so now their resume is just this like piecemealed sequence of facts that's not a narrative telling a compelling story. So job seekers need to spring clean and take some of their career history to Goodwill and really create a story that is enhancing and boosting the best parts about their work experience, not just this chronological list of facts, because that's going to lose audiences pretty quickly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've always said on the resume is that you've got about 10 seconds to communicate 3 things. What do you do? What's your core function that you're best at and have spent most of your career doing? Where do you do it? Is that in hospitals and boardrooms, et cetera? And how good were you? What are some of the facts that show you blew it out of the water? And those are the 3 things people look for in 10 seconds or less. And if they can't determine that, they're going to the next one.
Absolutely. Yeah. People painstakingly hyper analyze their work experiences from 15 years ago. And it's almost a waste of time because we got to hit those 3 things within 5 seconds or less and nail it, focusing on the most, call it the last 5 years to really capture the attention for sure.
What else, Heidi? You got the resume. That pillar. You got that pillar. What's the other pillar?
Yeah. Okay. So the next pillar would be the LinkedIn profile. So again, savvy job seekers are laying that foundation with their LinkedIn profile. So what that means is a really clean headshot. Headshots are very important. Okay.
So what if I have one that I look really good? My girlfriend's sitting next to me and the beer's down here and I'm able to cut both of those out. Is that kind of fine? No, that doesn't work.
With sort of like glazed over eyes, Joe?
Yeah, that doesn't work, huh? Okay.
No, those shots of that big tarpon you caught, those ones aren't great either.
Unless you are a tarpon fishing captain and you want to get a fishing captain's job, then maybe that would work. But other than that, I agree with you, right?
Yeah. I also see the one of like the guy in the car with his seatbelt on, like rear view shot.
Yes. All right. So that's you gotta have the headshot. What else, Heidi?
Right. So the thumbnail is incredibly important because what job seekers may not realize is when recruiters are searching, and Joe, you know this, our whole team knows this. When recruiters are searching, you don't go right into someone's profile. There's a few clicks that happen before you get to that point. So you have to see the bait that you want to see in order to decide if you're going to click into that person's profile, which of course then leads to a conversation. So before you click into someone's profile, you're evaluating their thumbnail sketch. And what I mean by that is that short little phrase underneath your picture that speaks to, in 4 or 5 words, who you are and what you offer. And if you're not clearly articulating that, then you're missing it. So again, what I see a lot of people doing with that is they have their current job title with their current employer. So it would be like for me, senior talent director at FloodGate Medical. That would be a terrible thumbnail if I was looking for a job. So Thumbnails are important. The about section is very important. That's where future employers are going to go and look to get a picture of who you are as a person, not just segmentations of your career. And I think putting a personal style to that is key. Don't be robotic about that. And third person, I'm personally not a fan of. So the about section that's got some punch, that's got some personality is very important. And then as far as the work experience goes, again, it's a fine line, enough information to give your audience a sense of what you've done, the division that you're in, what you've accomplished, right? What are some of those key contributions that you've made, but without a dictionary of information. You want to do it concisely. There's also other features about LinkedIn profiles people don't realize, which we could go on and on about, but having some recommendations from peers, former bosses is huge, especially for the algorithms on LinkedIn, which we could talk more about, including keywords like skills. Recruiters and employers search by those words. And so if you're leaving those out, you might miss some of those algorithm searches. So that's just a little touching the tip of the iceberg for LinkedIn profiles.
We have another one of these interviews with LinkedIn that if you ever want to look into our profile, you can do it. And I forgot to mention, guys, if you have questions, please type it in the chat thing. We'll answer some questions at the end. But yeah, we go a little bit deeper. That is another section, right? And what you can do on LinkedIn. The only thing I will say to people, and Heidi, I know you've said this before, people go, wow, I didn't know LinkedIn was that important to my job search. Well, I say back, I'm like, okay, when you go to buy something, do you expect them to mail you a brochure or do you go to their website? We don't get a mail brochure anymore. We go to their website. LinkedIn is your website. That is your job seeking website. That is the page you have. So you need to think about the keywords that are going to be searched there. You're going to make sure that's your first impression. The resume follows that, right? So just think of it. That's the order of importance.
Yeah, absolutely. And another comment about that, what I hear a lot of from people is they're at a point in their career where they feel like their network is all they need. So I hear a lot of, I don't need a resume, or I don't even use LinkedIn because I have this incredible network of people, right? So, and that may be true, but maybe what they're missing is that network is obviously, it's a ripple effect. Okay. So if they call their buddy who knows them and respects them, that buddy isn't necessarily going to be the person who hires them. That buddy is going to tell his buddy, who's going to tell his buddy about his friend Joe. Okay. So that third degree connection who doesn't know Joe is going to go and look at the LinkedIn profile. Right. And so even if you've got this super robust network, you still have to have that branded, strong personal marketing tool with your LinkedIn profile to engage those third or fourth degree connections.
Yep, makes total sense. You mentioned the third pillar, which is your value proposition, I like to call it, right? What's the value that you uniquely bring to the market? Any suggestions you have there, best practices?
Yeah, so the value proposition, maybe just to kind of step back about that, the value proposition that can be something that you use in a conversation with someone in your network or with a potential influencer or employer. Pre and post COVID, that could be something that you use at a trade show or in an elevator, which is where it kind of got the term. But it can also be used in your email messaging, in your email campaigns. So again, to use that example of your immediate network, your colleague of 20 years might know everything about you and might just intuitively know what value you have. But your goal when you're networking is not to stop with him or her. Your goal is to mobilize him or her to become your ambassador and to advocate for you. So you need to equip each person that you touch with the ammunition that they need to connect you to the right people. So that's kind of the framework for the value prop. I wanted to just zoom out and explain that. But the value proposition needs to do several things. So the value proposition needs to clearly and very concisely articulate the value that you bring to your future employer. It is not just a litany of all the things that you've accomplished. Employers want to know, what are you going to do for me tomorrow, right? Not what did you do last year or 5 years ago. So being able to capture the best parts of who you are and the things that you've done and put them into future tense of what you will do is crucial. Okay. So that's kind of the first part of the value prop. The second part of the value prop is really tying your experience, your accolades, your achievements into specifics about what you will do for said company. And so key elements would be, we already talked about accomplishments. So citing specific evidence, not just what I see a lot of is like, I'm an award-winning professional with 20 years of experience in the healthcare space. That narrows it down like zero, because that's what everyone says. Yeah. Everyone's award-winning. I get dazzle dogs every week, Joe.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly.
So just being really specific about your evidence and connecting your value to their need. If you think about like what's keeping them up at night, what problems do they have that you can solve, and wrapping that into your value proposition is time well spent.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and so if one thing I will recommend, some people stumble and struggle on finding their unique value proposition, because sometimes a little humility, right? Sometimes that self-reflection is difficult. Take 5 people closest to you, your ex-colleagues, manager, et cetera. Ask them what they would, what they think that you uniquely bring. They'll have some ideas, and they're probably right on. And so you can bring that into your value proposition as well. They'll help you write it a little bit easier.
Yeah, and Joe, this is probably seems like a minor thing, but as far as layout goes, when recruiters see a paragraph, and I would imagine it's the same for employers, they kind of, it's a lot. I'm not going to read a paragraph for every email that I open. So when you're crafting your value prop, think short, concise, meaty bullet points. Mm-hmm. And that's the way to go. That's how you're going to capture and engage the attention of your desired audience.
Yep. I win IDN contracts for disruptive, medical device, a new to market medical device. I mean, that right there, they go, oh, I got a new medical device and we don't have any IDN contracts. I need to talk to that guy. Pretty simple, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So great. Well, so we just talked about messaging, emails. You just gave a great example about shortening it, making it concise. That long paragraph, the eyes glaze over with that dead trout look, and they stop reading. So how else can they improve their messaging?
So, I would think maybe, again, just step back with the messaging before you just start dialing for dollars or doing the equivalent with email. And we're going to get more into this in next week's live event, right? When we talk more about networking. But for the sake of right now, I think what people do is when they're thinking about their messaging, right? Let's just say they've crafted their value proposition and now they're excited. They want to go out and use that. What I tend to see a lot of people do is they start with their best buds. That's not wrong. That's not bad. But if your best buds you're in oncology and your best bud is in oil and gas, right? Or maybe if they're even in healthcare, but they're in some distant vertical. starting with your closest relationships, while it feels natural and intuitive, the likelihood of them being the most influential advocate that they can be for you is unlikely. So my recommendation is to start with a triage approach. So consider who's the most influential person that I know, right? They don't have to be my best friend, that I know that is the most well-connected person in the space that I want to be in or that I'm already in. And let's start there. And then you kind of work your way out as you move through those concentric circles. So it's not, again, it's not based on proximity or intimacy of that friendship. It's based on how likely is it that they would be able to move the needle for me. So that's how I recommend starting that networking. And Joe, you and I have talked at length about how to name your network. So I know you have some.
We'll get into it more next week. So if you want to know how to name your network, come up with those people, what to say. We're going to unlock that one next week because that's another meaty topic. So, so we're going to. I want to take some questions if that's all right, Heidi, from our FloodGate family here. So what about cover letters? Is that even a thing anymore?
No.
Okay, that's an easy one, right? That's not. I can tell you, I was a hiring manager for, I don't know, 20 years, 15 years. I never read a cover letter, ever.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of professional resume writer type, executive coach type people out there, and they're charging $1,000 for a cover letter. And I've never read a cover letter, and I've probably gotten in the hundreds of thousands of them. So no, they're not a thing. Since Twitter was introduced to our worlds, we've all been conditioned to short, meaty sound bites, and a cover letter is the antithesis of that. So no cover letter.
Yeah. All right. And what about the length of the resume? Is that quintessential? Can't be more than 2 pages. Is that still a thing, or is that a thing of the past as well?
That's a good question, and it's not a clear answer. I would say that as a rule of thumb, anything over 3 pages is too long. So definitely it needs to be 3 or under. I think 2 is a good length, but obviously if you're, in the twilight of your career, keeping it to 2 pages may be difficult, and no one's really printing resumes anyways. So if it's 2.5 pages, no big deal. Don't cut it out. Yeah.
They don't notice. They're not printing them. But the key is everything in there has to be meaty and meaningful.
Exactly.
That fluff words and long paragraphs. If that's what's making it long, kill that. Not because it's too long, but because it's not going to be noticed. The important stuff's going to get noticed.
Right.
The end dates when they're let go. So when do you put something, you have an end date? I've seen when do you need to put that end date on your resume and on your LinkedIn? What's the rule of thumb there? What do you recommend?
Ooh,
Or will that turn away employers, right? So there's that risk. Hey, I only want someone's employed.
Right. So if we were talking pre-COVID, my advice would be a little bit different than in COVID. So pre-COVID, I would have said, if you're still on severance, keep it as you're still there, right? You're still employed, you're still on payroll. So it's safe and ethically accurate to say that you're still there. Right now, obviously, everything's changed. And so having an end date there may help spark more conversations when people know that you're actively on the market. That said, if you've been out of work for more than a few months, meaning like if you lost your position in 2019, that will be a stumbling block and that will hurt you. And so there's really no way around that, because if you mislead your audience and say that you're still there and then you get them on the phone, they're not going to be happy that you misled them. But it will hurt your causes, and you'll have to get creative in how you overcome that.
And just like anything, those who say the objection first win. So if you know that's the case, hit it up front. Verbally. Yeah. Hey, I've been to the I've been to the altar twice on 2-3 month-long searches and they didn't come together. That's the reason I'm still looking. Make sure it's, that's going to be the question of mind. It is, address it up front and nail it, put it to bed and move on. I agree.
Yeah. It's the people that play that and play the hard to get route and say, oh, I'm just waiting for that. I'm being really selective. And, it's pretty easy to see right through that. So again, to your point, I think we all appreciate just the honesty of, hey, this is what happened. This is what I'm doing about it. I've gotten really close. This is my full-time job and I'm excited and, ready to get back to work. That's this narrative that works better.
Makes sense. It's great. It's great. So we mentioned, that we come together, right? We got a lot to learn and you're doing a great thing, bringing a lot of job seekers together and in these boot camp groups. So if you're interested, ping Heidi, ping this. We'll be sending out more information about that boot camp. Additionally, networking is absolutely key, right? I mean, that referral network, especially in our world of med device, it's a big community, but it's pretty small. FloodGate Finder, a new app to help try to connect some people. So check those out as well. So guys, I appreciate it. We're here a little bit right at the half hour. So I appreciate you taking the time with us. Hope you've learned something today and look forward to seeing you again next week, and tell a friend if you thought it was valuable. Thank you.